Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Weather or Not. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens. We've got quite a lineup here for today as we're watching our forecast for the weekend. Obviously, many of you are tuned in to all the upcoming details, some more snow on the way. But first, some weather headlines to kick off the program. Of course, we've been starting our weekend with milder numbers carrying over from our Friday forecast, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But our focus really is going to be on Saturday. An Alberta clipper. We have mentioned this all week long, and it is still on track here for Saturday. It will produce a band of accumulating snowfall, and it'll be enough to cause some travel issues. It's not a winter storm warning, but it's an advisory, so I'll show you the map on that. And then also we're going to get colder as we get into Sunday. And that's typical, too, behind these clippers. You'll see the temperature go down briefly. That's in the forecast. So here are some headlines for your Saturday, the winter weather advisory. Again, watching some of the details, it'll maybe change a little bit on this, but the general swath comes in for Saturday for Sioux Falls and much of southeastern KELOLAND. And the heaviest of this snow will likely be Saturday afternoon, but already starting up in the morning a little bit. It looks like 2 to 5 inches will catch a lot of this. Now, there can be some isolated heavier totals. Some of the enhancement, we're going to walk through this coming up in the program, but a little bit north and a little bit east of Sioux Falls is where I would kind of watch the radar trends to see if we have some isolated higher totals, a little bit more than 5 inches. And obviously, anything like that, makes it a little bit more difficult to travel. The winds, too, they're not zero. They're definitely going to be around a little bit here, 15 to 30. So that gets us kind of into that moderate range. We expect some degree of blowing and drifting snow, but it's not expected to create widespread blowing snow or whiteout conditions necessarily, but still a system. It's on the weekend, and I know for many of you that's obviously going to play a role in what's going on here for your Saturday. All right, well, coming up next, we are going to take a look at all of these details. We've got a bunch of weather maps coming up here in the lineup. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to the program. Well, a lot on our agenda today as we're watching, of course, more snow making some headlines. Speaking of snow, it's interesting to watch what they've been doing at Great Bear. And, of course, looking at Terry Peak, too, they've been making a lot of snow, getting snow, and nice news for ski lovers. I know there's folks out there, variety of opinions, whether or not you like snow or not. But you got to admit, this has been a great way to start the ski season here at Great Bear, and the tubing hill looks pretty good too. So obviously, anxiously awaiting the official start date for Great Bear, and it looks like next week. Even when it warms up next week, I'm really not concerned about losing a bunch of snow on those particular slopes there. They're in pretty good shape here. And then, of course, you look at the Midwest. Isn't it interesting to see how much snow we already have this winter season across the northern plains and the upper Midwest? You go from Montana through much of North Dakota, of course, our region, and then all the way into Illinois and Iowa. There's a pretty decent depth of snow. The blue there, that darker blue, representing 3 to 4 inches at least. And then if it goes to purple or pink, gets over 6 inches of snow on the ground. And these are, again, estimates that this is a satellite-derived product. So it's interesting as, of course, we'll account for this new clipper. That'll just re-energize some of this. And isn't it interesting, too, that the clipper is going to navigate kind of right on top of that path of snow that's already out there. This is a graphic that I have been showing off and on through the week. And I left the white line there. That was kind of our original prediction from a few days ago, kind of a broader zone of a chance of accumulating snow. And then typically what we'll do is we'll start to refine the forecast. We'll start to, nail down a few more of the particulars as we get closer. And then what we have here is the overlay of the computer model from the European model, which is actually suggesting that Some of these totals in southwest Minnesota and maybe a little bit of northern Iowa could be a bit heavier. That happens with some of the more energetic Alberta clippers. Typically, they're fast enough movers that they don't produce a lot of widespread heavy snow, but you can get some banding in here, and certainly we're kind of leaning into that idea here as we kick off the weekend. Now, this is a little more of a depiction of following the low-pressure track as it moves through. This is the picture at 6 a.m. Saturday morning, moving down from Billings and then taking that track into western South Dakota. And then there it is during the afternoon, right to the left of the low track. That is what we watch. And you'll get some southeasterly winds ahead of the low that'll help to saturate the profile of the atmosphere. And based on the conditions we're watching, temperatures, too, make a big difference in the mid layers. Some really efficient snow production. And that's a little subtlety in weather forecasting. But, you know, when you get temperatures that are in a good range, there tends to be some certain highlights there that help those snow crystals to grow very efficiently. And we're probably looking at that here. So I think our snow rates are going to come down at a pretty good clip there Saturday afternoon. And that little bullseye just kind of floating north and east of Sioux Falls is a little bit of an interesting development. Now, in terms of the amounts of snow, we can kind of dig into this a little bit deeper because obviously we've got some carryover lighter snows from Friday. So that's kind of why this map starts off with some numbers of, you know, around that inch mark, give or take. But by Saturday afternoon, it's clearly showing 2 to 5 Sioux Falls, and we think that forcing goes to Worthington. I cannot argue with 3 to 6 there. I really feel like putting out a couple of areas near 6 inches of snow is very, very plausible. The Yankton number is interesting. That one comes in at 1 to 2. Some of the short-term modeling, though, from the American model is actually a little bit heavier to the south. So, again, there are some subtle differences here. There's not total agreement. I'm fine with Aberdeen going a couple of inches of snow. Last time, Aberdeen ended up surpassing their forecast and went a little bit above that, and it's been pretty good at snowing lately in Aberdeen. Well, let's face it. So we'll at least put out that nuisance amount, maybe an inch or two there. And I think that West River, not immune to a little snow. There'll be some wind, though. Rapid City, our forecast for Saturday is 20 to 40. That's the other story we want to get to. How about this wind forecast? And that always plays a role in these systems. The good news that we have with this particular layout, and again, as we switch gears to the wind forecast, not looking at terribly strong winds, but I still want to acknowledge where the winds could be a little bit problematic. We'll start off, of course, this is how we lean into the weekend. We got Friday's wrap up there, 10 to 20, gusting higher. But West River, that's where you see more of the yellows and the red colors. So on the back side of the low, that is the anticipation that we'll pick up some stronger winds that direction. Sioux Falls, while it's snowing, it'll be an east wind, okay? East at 15 to 25. So as you're doing some Christmas shopping or just watching the sparkle of the snow out your bay window, maybe that's what your plans are. Well, it'll be an east wind creating a little bit of that blowing and just some minor or moderate drifting. I think there is a little bit of that can move around. Temperatures will be in the mid-20s, so it's not an extremely heavy wet snow, but it's just enough where the wind can move it. You'll notice at 10 o'clock Saturday evening, there is a little bit of enhancement around Sioux Falls. And I've seen some data trying to push our wind gusts, maybe 30, 35 could happen. That's probably on the very highest of the projections. Most of this is probably 20 to 30. So a lot of experience. What I've seen over the past in a situation like this is this will create some finger drifts. Your unplowed roads, yep, you're just going to have to kind of barrel through some of that snow. It's a good one to have four-wheel drive because that'll tend to be a lot easier to getting through that coating of snow. And, of course, you've got to slow down. And all the things we talk about with winter driving skills, that's a whole nother topic, isn't it? But we all need to be reminded about that. Sunday morning, well, we're digging out, right? We'll be cleaning up the snow, light wind. It's going to be cold. I do have a couple of maps about the cold weather coming in on Sunday. I think that temperatures will be in the single digits both above and below zero. And then in the afternoon, the wind will pick up out of the south. But that will come along with another chance of light snow. Are you ready for that? Yeah, just enough. Maybe another inch could fall in a couple of locations. So obviously we'll be tracking that. Well, coming up, we've got more information to get to. We're going to be tracking the big picture. Yeah, the jet stream. We're going to look at next week. And yes, there are 50s ahead for western South Dakota. Yep, the weather will keep us on our toes. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back. Well, our weather forecast going into the weekend. Let's pick up where we left off here. I want to bring up our futurecast and how we're going to be discussing the particulars of the weather. And before we do that, I also want to give a little more attention to live cams and camera shots that you can always watch at KELOLAND.com and on our Storm Tracker app. And it's always interesting. Yeah, skiing can be a little challenging at times, right? Oh, but the fun that winter sports can bring. And I know Terry Peak, a lot of excitement around all of the skiing. We showed you Great Bear a little bit ago. Okay, let's see what's going to be changing in the weather. Well, we've got, of course, the hits of light precipitation from Friday. This is kind of a recap of the precipitation here as it's been moving across. Temperatures, though, really to start the weekend, not bad. Our Friday evening temperatures into the low 30s and gives us a chance to kind of recuperate a little bit after that cold shot that we had yesterday when it was just downright bitterly cold. I don't know if you kept track of all the morning lows, but 18 below was the morning low in Aberdeen. By the way, did you notice, too, some of the frost that developed on the bridges and overpasses? These fluctuating temperatures are notorious for that. So that's another item you got to keep in mind as we go upon the 7-day forecast. Ups and downs with temperatures tend to lead to that. Here's a closer look at this system for Saturday. And again, you can see the target zone of the snow as it's tracking in from the northwest. Obviously, it's picking up snow in Sioux Falls, even late morning. Officially, that advisory starts at 6 in the morning, but likely going to continue into the afternoon across southeast South Dakota, southwest Minnesota, and northwestern Iowa. At this point, the forcing there for Aberdeen and Watertown is not as great, so keep in mind some snow, but not probably as much. And then also Rapid City, Phillip, Faith, you see some snow on the backside of the low. But again, probably more of that being a nuisance variety snowfall. Some wind behind it. We pick up that cold temperature on Sunday morning. Look at the sub-zero readings coming in to Aberdeen, Watertown, Brookings, even Sioux Falls. I could see that easily being just a little bit below zero in the morning. Now, how's the weekend going to wrap up? So this is another thing I don't want to sweep under the rug because it's going to get lost. There's another patch of snow that's going to develop on Sunday, and that's going to be rolling in from western South Dakota. It's very obvious what's going on here if you pay attention to weather maps. We've got a warm front, and warm fronts deliver, by their definition, warmer air. And you can see the 30s in Rapid City Sunday afternoon. That contrasts with about, 4, 5, 6 degrees, Aberdeen, Watertown, Sioux Falls. So when that air mass is shifting again, it's going to create enough lift for a little bit of snow. At this point, nuisance, maybe an inch or so, but just keep an eye on that too. That's something on air and online we'll be watching through the weekend as that frontal feature drifts to the east. The good news is the air behind the warm front is here to stay for a little while, and it looks better. A little wind there on Monday, but hey, we're in the 40s in Rapid City. Pierre probably comes close to 40. And I'll have a special map here on Tuesday in a second. Let me show you the breakdown on Sundays. So as we entertain the idea of these cold temperatures during the morning, there's the sub-zero, the darker purple there. The afternoon tries to recover. We're going to settle in on about 10 in Sioux Falls. And with a fresh coating of snow, just adds to the whole effect there. You got a few 20s and 30s in southwest South Dakota. That's also accounted for. Now, let's switch the map and let's go into a warmer Monday. 20s to near 30 levels in Sioux Falls. I think those 40s are going to come back to western South Dakota in the afternoon. So that also is looking a little bit better. And it looks like right now, still projecting 50s in Rapid City on Tuesday. And you know what? I didn't need to move the bananas at all. I just left them there. So the old banana belt, as Mr. Dave Dedrick always used to say. I think that is so descriptive. It is always, a lot of times these northwest flow patterns, you'll catch these little warm-ups, and look at western Nebraska. We may not even be warm enough there. It might hit 60 in Scotts Bluff and Shatter, Nebraska. There's a lot less snow, of course, on the ground. And then you have East River and then into Minnesota. It just doesn't have the momentum, does it? That's a big deal. I know this time of year we kind of struggle, but still some 30s. I'm going to say, in my book, that's pretty respectable. So we'll take it. Speaking of those 30s and the extended forecast, that is going to be our topic of conversation coming up in our next segment. We're not done. We'll be right back. Stay with us right here on Whether or Not. All right, welcome back to the last segment of the program. And, of course, we'll be watching your weather forecast, not just for the weekend, but also next week. And what will winter bring us? It's that time of year now where, and with this pattern we've had lately, it kind of keeps us on our toes. So just as a quick recap to the story we'll be following, this Alberta Clipper for the weekend, there it is, the band of snow that comes in from Alberta. Thus the name, and also the track goes all the way past KELOLAND. We're just one stopping point in the middle of all of this. It goes through Iowa. It'll continue down into Illinois, probably continues from there. These systems typically take a turn and then go up into the East Coast. And so just to, again, keep up on the latest conditions on air and online. Winter has some interesting potential yet, too. Look at the snow cover across North America. This should tell you a little bit about the ability to recharging cold air. Now, it's not always a shoo-in that we're going to stay cold. In fact, I would argue in this extended forecast, we're actually going to get into segments where the weather will be above normal and probably significantly above normal, where we don't have much snow on the ground. So you can see at face value, parts of Nebraska, a lot of Kansas. I mean, they're really good shape to having a very mild week next week. Our forecast is going to be just kind of a mixed bag. We'll have Rapid City with some pretty warm numbers, especially highlighting Tuesday. The rest of this is going to be oscillating or kind of switching back and forth in the general weather cycle. So I've got a couple of maps here that we're going to take a little time and kind of pick this apart. So remember, in the winter season, the drivers, when we have a northwest flow pattern, what you're going to notice is the sloshing back and forth of the cold air and then the relatively mild air that's going to go and pivot. And so these little systems that come out of the northwest, these clippers, they feed off of that, okay? That's why they're there. They actually act as a redistribution mechanism that kind of takes the planetary conditions across North America. And yeah, each one of these systems kind of does its job here and feeds off of that. So we all obviously have acknowledged that once our clipper goes by on Saturday, our Sunday forecast, see the blue? Pretty obvious, isn't it? Across Minnesota, Wisconsin, even some purples in there. And those are temperatures that are several degrees below normal. If we hit a high temperature of 10 in Sioux Falls on Sunday, our normal high is still in the low 30s. So we're easily 20 degrees below average. And then you look to the west and you can see the remarkable change in the colors. See the Pacific Northwest? is all well above normal. So that's the exchange of air masses. It's Arctic air on one side of the Rockies, and then to the west, it's Pacific air. And as that Pacific air regroups, gets its act together, watch what that does next week. Isn't that something? Now, how warm it gets in Sioux Falls, we could play that game a little bit here. My thoughts initially on a pattern like this is that your overnight low will be probably the biggest part of the math equation on this. Because say, for example, you hit a high of 35. Okay, we'll throw that number out there. And then let's say, for example, your overnight low is also just in the upper 20s. And we saw that Friday morning, a lot of 20 and 30-degree weather. Well, right off the bat, you've got a day that's automatically in the books as being well above average just because of the account of the high and the low. And that's the kind of thing you'll get with overcast skies and typically with more snowpack. You just can't melt that stuff right away. You know how this works if you've lived here any extent of time. So a lot of times these warm air masses will come across that snowpack, and we could end up with a foggy day too. There's a number of things that can go wrong to derailing warmer weather. So I'm not a fan of going blowtorch warm in Sioux Falls. I think if we just hold it some, relatively mild weather in the 30s, that's probably very doable. Western South Dakota will continue to be mild. Now, after we get through next week, let's see where this goes next. So you can see another chunk of cold there, right? Okay, so that idea is out there. Maybe that feeds another clipper. Could do that. That's possible. That'd be a little more than 7 days away. But you also notice we're back at this again, where it goes back to above normal for a time. So these little switcheroos are going to continue to happen. And I do believe that will be a big player in the forecast as we obviously have to get into the days before Christmas and see what we've got going on with travel and how the weather patterns are going to hammer out. Now, the jet stream flow, which also kind of follows those same lines of thinking, the jet stream is going to follow that ribbon of below versus above. So where those tighter temperatures are, the jet will go right angling there. See the Pacific air? That story has not changed from yesterday. That's still a really powerful jet coming in, so I think that's going to pour over the Rockies. And the extent of that ridging, that's pretty impressive there as we get into the forecast. So obviously we'll be watching all of that as we get into next week. All right, well, that's the latest on our weather forecast. Thank you for watching, and have yourself a great weekend.